Welcome to Midnight Archives, a place where stories drift through the quiet hours, mysteries from history, forgotten moments, and gentle tales from the edge of the known. I'm glad you're here. Each night, we open the pages of a story, not to solve it, but to breathe it in. No dramatic tension, no sharp edges, just the slow unfolding of a mystery, like fog rolling in over calm waters. So, find a quiet place. Let your thoughts settle like leaves on a still pond. And together, let's drift into tonight's story. A dreamer in the quiet suburbs Frederick Valentich was born in Melbourne, Australia, in 1958. He was a thoughtful young man, quiet in nature, but always gazing skyward. His fascination with flight began early, when he would lie on the grass of his suburban backyard and watch airplanes carve pale trails through the deep blue of the southern sky. There was something soothing about the distance, the hum of engines fading into silence. His parents described him as gentle and curious, a boy who preferred reading about aircraft over playing sports. Even as a teenager, his room was filled with flight charts, aviation magazines, and model planes, carefully assembled and hung from the ceiling by nearly invisible strings. He enrolled at the Royal Australian Air Force Cadets, though his career didn't progress far. Still, his passion for flight remained strong. He later trained at a private flying school in Moorabbin, where he became a competent, if not remarkable, pilot. Friends remembered him as sincere, someone who respected the sky. And while he was still finding his place in the world, Frederick was known to be serious about flying. It gave him purpose and comfort, a sense of direction in a world that could often feel overwhelming. Planning the flight by October of 1978, Frederick had accumulated about 150 hours of flying time. On the 21st of that month, a Saturday, he booked a Cessna 182L light aircraft from Moorabbin Airport. The plan was to fly to King Island, a quiet stretch of land nestled in Bass Strait between Victoria and Tasmania. It wasn't a particularly long trip, just a few hours. He told officials he was going to pick up some crayfish, a detail that puzzled investigators later, as no arrangements had been made on the island. That afternoon was calm, a mild spring day in southern Australia. The kind of day where sunlight dapples through gum trees and a light breeze stirs the grasses. Frederick prepared diligently, filing his flight plan, checking weather conditions. At 6:19 p.m., as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the clouds in soft apricot hues, he lifted off from Moorabbin in the little silver and white Cessna. The route would take him southwest over Cape Otway, then out over the Bass Strait. It was a solitary journey, yet one Frederick seemed eager for. Perhaps he found peace in the hum of the engine, the solitude of the skies, and the slow drift of coastlines far below. The radio transmission begins at 7:06 p.m. Frederick radioed Melbourne flight service. He was flying at about 4,500 feet and reported his position just south of Cape Otway. The controller, Steve Roby, responded routinely. But then, at 7:09 p.m., Frederick asked if there were any known aircraft flying below 5,000 feet in his area. Roby responded that there were none. "It seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000, Frederick said calmly. There was no panic in his voice, only quiet curiosity. Over the next several minutes, he described unusual movements. The aircraft appeared to be orbiting above him. It had a shiny metal surface and four bright lights. Roby, concerned but composed, asked for further clarification. Frederick noted that the object wasn't identifiable as an aircraft. It moved erratically, too fast for a plane, and vanished only to reappear moments later. Then, at 7:12 p.m., he said something odd. "It is not an aircraft. His tone remained soft, unshaken, like someone trying to understand something that didn't quite make sense. The last transmission at 7:15 p.m., Frederick's voice became slightly more strained, but still clear. He said the strange object was approaching from the east. He described it as elongated with a green light on it. The aircraft hovered above him and seemed to be playing some sort of game, he said. It wasn't threatening exactly, just confusing. There was a pause. Then Frederick added, "It is hovering and it's not an aircraft." Those were among his final words. Then came 17 seconds of metallic scraping sounds, unaccompanied by voice. The transmission ended. No further contact was made. It was as if the sky had closed around him. As softly as he had taken off, Frederick had vanished. The search and silence authorities launched a search early the next morning. Aircraft scoured the Bass Strait, and ships combed the waters near King Island. The sea was calm, visibility was fair, and the area had few hazards. Yet no trace of the Cessna was ever found. Not a piece of fuselage, not a life jacket, nothing. The mystery only deepened. For days, planes flew over the strait, eyes scanning the silver-blue water. Radio logs were reviewed, weather reports rechecked. No anomalies were found. Pilots were puzzled. Some speculated that Frederick may have become disoriented or experienced vertigo. But many found it hard to reconcile such a clean disappearance with a simple mistake. In the weeks that followed, bits of supposed wreckage were reported but none verified. The silence around the event grew thicker, like fog rolling in over empty waters. A world of theories. As the months passed, theories bloomed quietly. Some thought Frederick staged his disappearance. Others suggested an accident or engine failure. Yet the radio transcript troubled many. What had he seen? What was that green light? And what were those strange metallic sounds? UFO enthusiasts took particular interest. The 1970s had been a fertile time for sightings, and Frederick's case seemed to offer a compelling thread. The fact that he described an unknown object with precise detail just moments before disappearing was hard to ignore. Still, official channels were measured. The Department of Transport conducted an investigation. Their final report could not determine the cause. They stated that the reason for the disappearance was unknown, and the aircraft had likely crashed into the sea. That was all. But outside that official line, the questions drifted on, unanswered. Frederick's story became a kind of soft legend, a gentle enigma wrapped in sky and sea. People remembered him not with fear, but with a sort of dreamy sadness. He was young, sincere, and quiet, someone who looked up at the stars and wondered. Books were written, documentaries aired, UFO researchers analyzed every detail. Even those who didn't believe in extraterrestrial life found themselves drawn to the calm cadence of Frederick's final minutes. His voice on the recording never broke. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He simply described what he saw, until he couldn't anymore. For his family, the loss was quiet but deep. They remembered a boy who loved the sky, and though no remains were ever found, they held on to the idea that maybe, somewhere beyond the clouds, there was an answer. The story of Frederick Valentich still floats gently in the world, occasionally revisited, sometimes retold. Not as a horror, not as a thriller, but as a bedtime story of a young man who took to the skies and never returned. On quiet nights, when stars scatter across the southern sky and the wind whispers through the gum trees, some still look up and wonder. Maybe he flew farther than we can see. Maybe the mystery is meant to remain. Or maybe, in those final moments, he touched something we do not yet understand. And as you drift to sleep, let the hum of the Cessna's engine guide you, gently, through that dusky sky. Let the unanswered questions fall away, like leaves in soft wind. What matters is the calm, the peace, the twilight between knowing and dreaming. The Bass Strait has always held a certain hush to it, a wide stretch of water that shimmers in moonlight and sleeps under cloud-soft skies. It's a place where the sea and air seem to share a quiet understanding. Sailors and pilots have long spoken of its moods. The way fog rolls in like a blanket, the stillness before a sudden gust, and for some, the feeling that they are not entirely alone. In the days following Frederick's disappearance, locals along the Victorian coast shared stories. A couple walking along the cliffs near Apollo Bay thought they saw a flicker of light out at sea that night. A fisherman on King Island reported an odd green glow low on the horizon. None of the stories were conclusive, just quiet observations, like scattered pieces of a puzzle missing their center. Frederick's route would have taken him directly over this tranquil strait. Beneath him, waves moved with the rhythm of the evening tide. Above, the stars blinked gently into place. The Cessna's engine would have purred steadily, blending with the wind. In that vast in-between, between sea and sky, something unusual happened. And then all was still. The weather that evening was mostly stable. Reports showed calm wind conditions, with only scattered clouds above 5,000 feet.
No thunderstorms, no lightning.
Just a soft, uneventful twilight. Pilots that day described the sky as kind. The sun had set gently. The air carried the scent of eucalyptus and ocean salt. This is what made the case so unusual to experienced aviators. The conditions offered no obvious dangers. Visibility was good. Frederick was flying below the cloud line. And yet, something pulled him from that sky. Some experts suggested optical illusions caused by light refraction or visual misinterpretation. The human eye, after all, can be tricked by the shadows and curves of clouds or the shimmering mirages over sea at dusk. But such explanations always seem to fall short of the detail in Frederick's account. The metallic sheen, the distinct green light, the hovering. And so, while science tried to draw clean lines, the quiet mystery remained. A soft question floating gently in the sky. The sounds of that final moment, the final 17 seconds of the transmission, were not silence. They were filled with a sound that would stay with those who heard it. Metallic, scraping, unclear, not like static, not quite like mechanical failure, more like the friction of metal on metal, or perhaps something brushing against the aircraft. Experts analyzed the audio. Some said it resembled the sound of a sheared propeller. Others heard rhythmic pulses. There was no consensus. What lingered most was its texture, oddly smooth yet harsh, like something brushing against the frame of the Cessna. A whisper of contact, if one could call it that. In a quiet Melbourne office, the controller Steve Roby listened again and again. Not out of obsession, but out of care. He wanted to be sure he hadn't missed anything. He hadn't. There was simply nothing more to hear. The tape would later be archived, and a transcript released. But no one could say what the sound truly was. Only that it was the last thing Frederick shared with the world. Life before the flight, it's easy to focus only on the disappearance. But before that final flight, Frederick had lived a full, if brief, life. He liked to visit the beach at Black Rock, near Melbourne, where waves lapped at smooth stones and seagulls wheeled overhead. He often brought a small notebook with him. He would sketch airplanes and write little notes, observations about the sky, questions about aerodynamics, dreams of building a career in aviation. His mother, Guida, remembered him coming home late from flying lessons, still buzzing with excitement. He would describe his flights in quiet detail, how the sun reflected on the wing, how the engine responded in crosswinds, how the land seemed to unfurl beneath him like a painted map. He wasn't reckless. If anything, he was careful to a fault. Friends said he could recite procedures from memory, always double-checked his gear. And yet, there was a gentle boldness in him. The kind that lets you chase a dream, even into the unknown. King Island, the place Frederick never reached, is a peaceful dot of land in the Bass Strait. It has soft hills and windswept fields, where cows graze and the air smells faintly of salt and peat. The people there live quietly, close to the land. On the night of October 21st, no one saw a plane arrive. No one heard an engine pass overhead. The island lay still under a silver moon. In the days after, some residents walked the beaches, looking for signs. A life raft, debris, footprints. But there was nothing, just shells and driftwood and the endless hush of the waves. To this day, some islanders still remember Frederick. Not as a mystery, but as a boy who meant to visit and never came. The airstrip remains, nestled beside grassy fields and the ocean's sigh. A silent welcome that was never answered. In the mind of a pilot, pilots often speak of a connection to the air, a way of reading the sky not just with instruments, but with instinct. Frederick, though young, had started to develop this. He knew the moods of the clouds, the whispers of wind against the wings. He trusted his instruments, but also trusted his eyes. And so, when he described something unusual in the sky, he did so with care. Not drama, just measured observation. It is hovering, and it's not an aircraft, he had said.
No embellishment.
Just the truth as he saw it. That restraint has always puzzled skeptics. Why not exaggerate if he were imagining it? Why not panic if he felt threatened? But his calm tone suggested he wasn't frightened, just deeply, curiously unsure. Perhaps that's what makes the event linger so softly in our minds. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a gentle question posed into the vastness. Ripples across the years in the decades that followed, the story of Frederick Valentich continued to ripple outward. Occasionally, new sightings were reported, objects in the sky, lights over the strait. Each would prompt a momentary flutter of attention, but none would lead to an answer. In 2014, a hobbyist uncovered a report of an engine cowling found near Flinders Island years earlier. It matched the model of Frederick's Cessna, yet no confirmation was ever made. And so, it too became part of the gentle archive of maybe. His family kept his memory quietly. No public appeals.
No loud campaigns.
Just remembrance. His younger brother later said he believed Frederick had encountered something real. Something we weren't yet ready to understand. And maybe that's the lasting note. Not fear, not closure, but openness. To the skies, to wonder, to stories that, like soft winds, continue to drift. The flight path in gentle detail. Frederick's intended flight path was simple on paper. Depart Moorabbin Airport, track southwest over Cape Otway, then cross the Bass Strait and land at King Island. A journey of roughly 125 nautical miles. For a pilot with over 150 hours of flight time, it was manageable, familiar even. Yet each path taken through the sky is its own quiet adventure. After takeoff, he would have passed over Port Phillip Bay, the city's glow behind him softening into twilight. He might have glanced down to see the coastline slipping by like a painted ribbon, Mornington Peninsula, then the rugged cliffs near Aries Inlet. As he reached Cape Otway, the final point of land before the strait, he would have looked out over water. There was something different in that moment. Flying beyond the coast into the blue reach, the land behind, the island ahead, nothing below but ocean, just him and the sky. At Cape Otway stands a white lighthouse, perched on the edge of the cliffs. Its beam has turned slowly through night after night since the 1800s. It's seen stormy skies, calm sunsets, and the hush of fog rolling in like a secret. The night of October 21st, the light swept in its usual arc. Keepers on duty saw nothing unusual. No signs of distress, no flashes in the sky, just the slow, deliberate turning of time and light. Later, search efforts would use this lighthouse as a reference point. Aircraft scouted from here, tracing Frederick's estimated position. Boats set out along the coast below. But the lighthouse itself remained silent, unable to illuminate what had passed overhead. Some say the lighthouse beam might have briefly touched the Cessna as it passed. A fleeting moment of recognition, like a wave from one traveler to another, and then the sky closed again. The search begins when Frederick failed to land. The alarm was quiet but swift. Air traffic controllers noted the missed arrival and contacted authorities. By morning, a coordinated search had begun. Aircraft flew patterns over the Bass Strait. Boats scanned the waves. The Australian Navy joined, along with volunteer pilots and local fishers. They searched for days. Over 1,000 square kilometers were covered. The sea was calm, compliant. Visibility was good. But there was nothing. Not a scrap of metal. Not a floating cushion. Just waves and sky. Searchers reported feeling a strange stillness, as if whatever had happened had left no trace, no footprint, only the absence itself. Eventually, the search was called off. With no debris and no signal, there was nothing left to follow. But many of those involved would later say they felt they had missed something just out of sight. Steve Roby's voice had been calm during the exchange. As the controller speaking with Frederick that night, he had followed protocol, asked clear questions. But there was a moment, just a moment, when uncertainty crept in. When Frederick reported the long shape following him, Steve asked for clarification. The signal faded, then returned. It's hovering, and it's not an aircraft. There was a pause. Not long, but deep. Steve could do nothing but listen. He later described the moment as surreal. Like watching a door begin to open, only to close again before you could see through. A transmission across distance and time, unsettling not because it was loud, but because it was so quiet, so earnest, so unresolved. The Australian Department of Transport opened a file. They gathered transcripts, weather data, maps, and audio. The case was not declared closed, but rather placed in a category all its own, unexplained. Years later, researchers would comb through those documents. Some published books, others gave lectures, a few simply reflected. The file itself became a kind of quiet monument, not to what was found, but to what wasn't. In a box in Canberra, the transcript still rests, typed pages neat and clear. On them, Frederick's words sit like distant stars, simple sentences spoken into the air, still echoing softly, still unanswered. Throughout history, lights in the sky have carried meaning. In ancient times, they were omens. Later, they became curiosities. In Frederick's case, the green light he described would become the most discussed detail. He said it moved around him, that it hovered, then vanished, that it didn't behave like any aircraft he'd ever seen. The light wasn't blinking. It was steady, constant, not red, not white, but green. Some have said it could have been Venus, bright in the western sky. Others propose reflections or atmospheric flares, but none quite match the pattern he described. And so, the green light remains, a glowing thread in the story, neither proven nor disproven, just floating softly in the sky of our memory. The aircraft Frederick flew was a Cessna 182L, tail number Delta Sierra Juliet, a single-engine high-wing monoplane, reliable, sturdy, simple to fly. He had flown it before, knew its hum, trusted its responses. That day, it was fueled for the journey, in serviceable condition, maintenance logs up to date. After his disappearance, the aircraft was never found. Not a seat cushion, not a wing strut, nothing. And so, the plane became part of the mystery. Not just the vessel of Frederick's flight, but a companion in disappearance. A shape once present, now quietly gone. Many theories emerged over time, some gentle, some imaginative, a few grounded in skepticism. One proposed that Frederick became disoriented and flew upside down, mistaking reflections on the sea for lights in the sky. Others believe he faked his own death, though no motive was ever found. Still others suggest a sudden mechanical failure or engine stall. But the most persistent theory, spoken softly, often late at night, is that he encountered something unknown. Not hostile, just unknown. Perhaps he entered a rare atmospheric condition. Or perhaps he saw something we aren't ready to explain. Theories, like lullabies, offer comfort through possibility, even if they don't lead to answers. Weather and the whispering wind. The evening air on October 21st, 1978, was calm, but brisk. Over the Bass Strait, the wind carried a steady rhythm. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a hush across the water. Weather reports from that night confirmed clear skies. Only the softest cloud layers drifting high above. For a pilot like Frederick, these were favorable conditions. No thunderheads, no gusty surprises, just the sky, open and even. Yet some say it's in the quiet weather that the unusual makes its presence known. The wind, like the sea, tells no tales. But those who reviewed the reports noted a curious stillness, a kind of absence where there should have been more turbulence, as though nature itself had paused to listen to the radio waves. Frederick's last words were captured on tape. The faint and fragmented message. "It's not an aircraft." Then silence. Then a metallic scraping noise. Then nothing. Transcription analysts examined the tape repeatedly. Some heard mechanical interference. Others believed it was the engine. A few, cautiously, thought it sounded like something else, a reverberation too deliberate to be static. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't panic. It was oddly calm, as if Frederick had run out of words before he ran out of time. And in that unfinished sentence lies a mystery, a breath left hanging in the air, never quite touching down. The letters left behind at home. Frederick kept a journal. Inside, notes on flight procedures, favorite aircraft, study reminders, and one letter never mailed, addressed to a friend from his air training corps days. In it, he wondered aloud what lay beyond known flight paths. The letter didn't hint at fear or obsession, just a question. A dreamer's question, his handwriting steady, his tone thoughtful. To those who knew him, the letter sounded like Frederick, quietly inquisitive, forever looking up. The unseen witnesses in the days after Frederick vanished. Reports trickled in. From southern Victoria, a couple camping near Cape Otway, a farmer near Apollo Bay, a sailor off Portland. Each described strange lights, fast-moving, hovering, then gone. None claimed it was a UFO. They simply said what they saw, and their voices were quiet, the kind used when describing things that don't quite fit. Their stories were noted, then filed. Not proven, not dismissed, just left in the margins of the case, like faint stars just outside the field of vision. The radio operators, the men on the other side of the radio that night, were professionals. Calm, methodical, clear. They kept Frederick on the line as long as they could, asked questions, checked coordinates, traced the conversation second by second. Afterward, they filled out their reports. Then they went home, but some later said they never truly left the frequency. That part of them stayed in the static, still listening, still hoping. Frederick's family waited. They answered questions. They spoke to the press. They scanned the sea with borrowed binoculars. His father believed his son had encountered something. He didn't say what. He didn't pretend to know. But he trusted Frederick's voice. And voices matter, especially when they are the last thing left. The Bass Strait's long memory, the waters between Victoria and Tasmania, hold many secrets. Wrecks, legends, lost cargo. The sea doesn't forget, but it doesn't give up its stories easily. Some say the Bass Strait has moods, that on certain nights it remembers, that maybe, just maybe, it remembers Frederick. Echoes in popular culture songs, documentaries, podcasts. Over the decades, the Valentich case found new ears. Some retell it with suspense, some with skepticism, some with sorrow, but all return to the same moment, the last transmission, the silence after. When the stars seem closer, some believe the sky holds answers, that perhaps what we call unidentified is only unlearned. Frederick looked up often. He believed the air was for everyone, not just aircraft, not just clouds, everyone. Objects in stillness. In a quiet museum room sits a model Cessna, white, small, perfectly built. No plaque explains it. No spotlight shines on it. But to some, it is Delta Sierra Juliet, returned in memory. The sky is listening. What if the sky could answer? What if, somewhere in the layers of atmosphere and silence, there's still a voice calling back? Late night radio somewhere. A ham radio operator dials through static. It's midnight. He isn't looking for voices, just a signal, and maybe something unexpected. The man who vanished gently, Frederick, didn't vanish in a storm or a crash. He vanished in conversation, speaking, listening, wondering. He disappeared gently. For those who wander, not every flight has a destination. Some are just paths, marked by questions, held aloft by curiosity. Notes in the logbook. The last line in Frederick's logbook reads, "Destination, King Island." But sometimes the destination isn't the end. It's the invitation. Twilight and memory. The sun sets and twilight deepens. The air cools and memories rise. Frederick's story floats there, not solved, not silenced, just present. What remains? No wreckage, no conclusion, but something remains, a voice, a light, a question, and perhaps a reminder that the sky is wider than we think. Over open water somewhere out there, the ocean breathes, wide, dark, and listening. Perhaps it carries whispers, not of answers, but of presence, that somewhere in the tides, Frederick's flight continues, not lost, just extended. Beneath the quiet stars when the world sleeps, the stars look down. They do not blink. They do not speak. But they remember. And maybe they remember him, still ascending, still asking, still part of the night sky. The compass unread in every cockpit. A compass spins, guiding, steady. But sometimes the sky offers no heading, only wonder, and Frederick followed that instead. What the wind carries, the wind over Bass Strait moves fast and far. It carries sea salt, bird cries, echoes. Maybe it carries stories too, and maybe one of them still carries his name. The last glimpse, some say, a fisherman saw a light blink out, low over the water. Others say it was a meteor, but perhaps it was a farewell. From sky to sea, from sun to stars. Chapter 46. Between two horizons, there's a place where sky meets sea. Frederick flew there, not between destinations, but between horizons. A flight recalled years later. Someone hears the recording, the transmission, the questions, and for a moment, they stop and listen. Notes in the wind. What if the sky hums with memories? Not loud, not clear, but steady. And what if, somewhere in that hum, Frederick sings back? The unfinished journey. Every story needs an end. But not every journey does. Some continue past our sight. Frederick's might be one of them. The final echo in the quiet night, when dreams are soft and stars are near, one echo remains. Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne, still waiting, still heard. You've been listening to Midnight Archives, where questions are welcome and answers are optional. Tonight, as you rest, let the story stay with you, not to puzzle over, but to dream through. If you enjoyed this quiet journey, consider subscribing and let another mystery find you when the moon is high. Until then, good night, sleep well, and may the sky always be kind to those who wander.